The zip ties cut into Liana's wrists as two men in black suits dragged her through the marble hallway. Her sneakers squeaked against polished floors that probably cost more than her entire year's salary in Atlanta. She didn't scream. Screaming hadn't helped when they'd grabbed her outside her apartment, and it wouldn't help now. They stopped before massive double doors. One guard knocked twice. "Duliowa, come in!" The voice was smooth, controlled, absolutely terrifying in its calmness. They shoved her inside, and Liana stumbled, catching herself before she fell. The office was all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking Seoul's glittering Gangnam district. Ink paintings of tigers hung on the walls, traditional Korean art that probably cost more than most people's houses. And behind the desk sat the man who now owned her. Jae-won Baek didn't look up from the document he was signing. A dragon tattoo coiled up his left forearm, disappearing beneath his rolled shirt sleeve. More ink peeked from his collar. She caught a glimpse of what looked like Korean characters against his throat. A scar cut through his eyebrow, pulling his face into a permanent expression of dangerous beauty. When he finally lifted his gaze, his eyes were the coldest thing Liana had ever seen. "Marcus's payment," one guard said in Korean, as if she were a package. Jae-won's eyes dragged over her, slow, assessing, clinical. Liana's skin prickled under that gaze, her body registering threat even as something darker twisted low in her stomach. She hated that she noticed how his shirt stretched across his shoulders, hated that even terrified, some traitorous part of her brain registered. Dangerous, yes, but devastating. "Cut her loose," he said in English, his accent barely there, "and leave us." One guard sliced through the zip ties. Blood rushed back into Liana's hands, painful and pins and needles sharp. She rubbed her wrists as the door clicked shut, leaving her alone with him. Silence stretched between them like a blade. Then Liana did something stupid. She spit directly in his face. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Jae-won didn't move, didn't blink, just sat there with saliva sliding down his cheek, his expression utterly blank. The only sign of life was a muscle ticking in his jaw. Once, twice. When he reached for a handkerchief, his movements were precise, controlled. He wiped his face, folded the cloth, set it on the desk like he was performing surgery. "Brave," he said softly, rising from his chair, "or suicidal. I haven't decided which. I'm not property." Liana's voice shook, but she pushed through it. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she thought he might hear it. "I don't care what Marcus told you. I'm an American citizen, and when my embassy, your embassy knows nothing." He moved around the desk, and God, he was tall, 6'3" at least, broad-shouldered in that perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit. He moved like a panther, liquid grace wrapped around lethal intent. The distance between them evaporated with each step. "You entered Korea on a tourist visa that expired 4 months ago," he continued, voice soft as silk over steel. "You've been working illegally at that English academy in Itaewon. One phone call and you're deported in handcuffs. Or worse, Korean prisons aren't kind to foreign women who overstay their welcome." Ice flooded Liana's veins. He knew everything. Her visa status, where she worked, probably where she bought her morning coffee. The room tilted slightly. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she caught his scent, something expensive and cedar dark that made her head swim. "You stay here, 30 days, then you walk away, free, clean visa, cash for a flight home, and Marcus's debt marked as paid." 30 days of what exactly? The words came out sharper than she intended, but fear was curdling into rage in her chest. Her nails bit into her palms. "Being your what? Your slave? My guest." That stopped her. Liana blinked, certain she'd misheard. "What?" "You'll have your own suite in the East Wing, access to the library, the gym, the gardens." His tone was businesslike, as if negotiating a merger. "Meals prepared by my chef. Anything you need within reason." "And at night?" Her throat felt tight, voice barely above a whisper. "What happens at night?" Something flickered across his face. Too quick to read, but it looked almost like offense. "Nothing you don't agree to." "I don't believe you. I don't care." He turned away, pouring amber liquid from a crystal decanter. The dragon on his arm rippled as muscles shifted beneath inked scales. "But I'm not a liar, Ms. Williams. I'm many things, most of them unforgivable. But I don't lie about terms." Liana's mind raced, tripping over itself. This didn't make sense. Men like him, men who trafficked in debts and violence, didn't offer comfortable guest suites and free passes after 30 days. There had to be a catch. Had to be. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why would you agree to this? Marcus owed you money, not me. Jaewon took a slow sip of whiskey, his back still to her. Your ex-boyfriend offered you as collateral. I accepted to make a point. What point? He turned then, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. It wasn't cruelty exactly. It was something colder, emptier. A void where human feeling should be. That Beck debts are always collected, one way or another. But here's what she didn't know yet. What she couldn't possibly know as she stood there trying not to shake. Jaewon Beck had already made a decision that would change both their lives. He just hadn't admitted it to himself. The room felt smaller suddenly, darker. Liana's pulse thundered in her ears as he crossed the space between them. He invaded her personal space, close enough that she felt the heat radiating off. His body close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. But let me be clear, Ms. Williams. His voice dropped lower, intimate and deadly. Those 30 days start now. You try to run. You try to contact anyone outside these walls. You do anything that threatens my organization. He reached out and she flinched. Couldn't help it. But he only tucked a loose braid behind her ear, his fingertips barely grazing her cheek. The touch was almost gentle. Almost. It burned like a brand. And the deal is void. Ihayaso. Do you understand? His fingers lingered a second too long. Liana's skin felt electric where he'd touched her, and she hated it. Hated that her body responded to proximity she should only fear. She wanted to shove him away, wanted to scream, wanted to wake up in her tiny Itaewon apartment and discover this was all some horrible nightmare. Instead, she lifted her chin and met his gaze dead on. I understand you're a monster who thinks he can buy people. His lips curved, not quite a smile, more like a wolf baring teeth. I don't think it, Liana. The way he said her name, soft, almost caressing, like it was something precious, sent a shiver down her spine that she absolutely refused to acknowledge as anything but fear. I just did. His eyes dropped to her mouth, stayed there, 1 second, 2, long enough that heat flooded her cheeks and her breath hitched audibly in the silence. Then he stepped back, and the temperature in the office seemed to rise 5 degrees without his proximity. Minho will show you to your room, Jaewon said, already turning away, dismissing her like she was nothing. Dinner is at 8. You're expected to attend. We eat Korean here. I hope you're not picky. And if I refuse, then you'll go hungry, and I'll have Minho carry you to the dining room anyway. He returned to his desk, picking up his pen. Your choice, but I should mention, my chef makes the best galbijim in Seoul, braised short ribs. It would be a shame to miss it. The door opened. Minho gestured for her to follow, his expression carefully neutral. Liana's hands were still trembling as she rubbed her wrists, feeling the ache settle deep into her bones. The zip tie mark stood out angry and red against her brown skin. As she turned to leave, she couldn't help one last glance back. Jaewon was watching her over the rim of his whiskey glass, and for just a moment she could have sworn she saw something beneath that icy exterior, something that looked less like ownership and more like fascination, like he'd expected her to crumble and was surprised, maybe even impressed, that she hadn't. His gaze traveled down her body again, not leering, not clinical this time either, something else entirely. Something that made her feel stripped bare despite being fully clothed. The door closed behind her, and Liana realized with sinking certainty that 30 days might be the rest of her life. Because men who looked at women the way Jaewon Beck had just looked at her, like they were a puzzle to solve, a challenge to conquer, a treasure to claim, they didn't let go. If you're already hooked and want to see how Jaewon's obsession unfolds over the next 3 nights, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens when Liana sits across from him at dinner tonight. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The suite was bigger than Liana's entire apartment back in Itaewon, and she hated it on sight. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a private garden where cherry blossom trees swayed in the evening breeze. The bed was enormous, dressed in silk sheets. Through an open doorway, she glimpsed marble and gold, a bathroom that belonged in a palace. Minho set her backpack on a bench. Clothes in the closet, your size. Dinner at 8. Don't be late. His English was clipped. Then he was gone. Liana moved to the closet and stopped breathing. Designer labels. Dresses that would actually fit her curves. Shoes in her exact size. How did he know? And at the back, lingerie in silk and lace that made heat crawl up her neck. At the very end hung a handbag in deep burgundy with gold embroidery. Absolutely not, she muttered, grabbing black jeans and a cream sweater instead. If she had to have dinner with a monster, she'd do it in armor. She braided her hair tight, controlled, and tried to ignore how her hands shook. When Minho returned at 7:55, she followed him through hallways decorated with Korean antiquities worth more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes. Her pulse hammered with each step. The dining room was intimate. Table set for 2 beneath crystal. Traditional Korean dishes covering every surface. The promised galbijim, kimchi, japchae, banchan in small jeweled dishes. Jaewon stood at the windows, hands in his pockets. He'd loosened his tie. The dragon tattoo on his neck was fully visible now, Korean characters winding up behind his ear. Yong. Dragon. The ink should have looked thuggish. Instead, it just made him look like exactly what he was. Deadly. He turned when she entered, and his gaze traveled over her sweater, her jeans, back to her face. Something flickered there. Disappointment? No. Something closer to approval. You didn't wear the dresses. I don't take gifts from men who buy me. Liana sat in the chair farthest from him, without waiting for permission. The corner of his mouth twitched. You're going to be difficult about everything, aren't you? You expected me to be grateful? No. He sat across from her, close enough that she caught his scent again, cedar and amber. I expected you to be smart enough to survive. So far, you're exceeding expectations. Was that a compliment? From a man who collected people like debts? A staff member appeared, pouring wine for Jaewon and water for her. I don't drink, Liana said. Not until I know you better. Can't have you getting ideas about what to do with a wine bottle. He picked up his chopsticks. Eat. Chef Min will be offended if you don't. I'm not hungry. Her stomach growled so loudly it echoed. Jaewon's scarred eyebrow lifted, and this time his mouth definitely curved. Almost a smile. The expression transformed his face from terrifying to devastating, and Liana's traitorous heart skipped. Liar. Fine, I'm starving. Happy? She grabbed her chopsticks, fumbling with the grip. 2 years in Korea, and she still couldn't get it right. Jaewon watched her struggle for exactly 3 seconds. Then he sighed, stood, and moved around the table. What are you... He was behind her chair before she could finish. His hand covered hers, adjusting her grip, his chest nearly against her back. Heat radiated off him in waves that made her head swim. Top one moves, bottom one stays still. His breath stirred the hairs at her temple as he guided her hand, his fingers rough calloused against hers. Like this, see? Liana couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Every nerve ending sparked to life where his skin touched hers. This close, she felt the solid wall of muscle against her spine, caught the steady rhythm of his breathing, noticed how his other hand gripped the back of her chair like he needed the support. Got it, she managed, voice strangled. He didn't let go immediately. His thumb traced the zip tie marks on her wrist, feather-light, almost reverent. I didn't tell them to hurt you? The unexpected apology punched through her defenses. They didn't. I mean, not really. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're terrified. His voice dropped lower, rough silk against her ear. But you're also brave enough to spit in my face, so maybe you'll be fine eventually. Then he released her and returned to his seat, leaving her skin burning and her pulse chaotic. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that Jaewon's hands were shaking as he picked up his chopsticks, that he'd counted to 10 before touching her, that every instinct screamed to pull her closer instead of walking away. They ate in loaded silence. The food was incredible, melt-in-your-mouth tender, perfectly spiced. Liana tried not to moan around the first bite of galbi-jim, but failed spectacularly. Jaewon's chopsticks froze halfway to his mouth. His gaze locked on her lips, on her throat as she swallowed. The temperature in the room spiked 10 degrees. When she looked up, the hunger in his eyes had nothing to do with food. "So," Liana said desperately, "do you always eat dinner with your prisoners?" "You're not a prisoner." "Right, I can leave any time." She took another bite, larger than necessary. "Oh, wait. You agreed to 30 days. Under duress. Under pragmatism." He set down his chopsticks, giving her his full attention. Those eyes pinned her in place like a butterfly under glass. "Tell me something, Liana. What were you planning to do after your visa expired? Before Marcus made his deal?" The question caught her off guard. "Why do you care?" "Humor me." She shouldn't answer, shouldn't give him anything real, but maybe it was exhaustion or the way he asked, not demanding, just genuinely curious, that cracked her open. "I was going to apply to med school," she heard herself say, "back in Atlanta. I've been studying for the MCAT between teaching classes. My mom died because doctors at our underfunded hospital misdiagnosed her, and I wanted—" Her throat closed. "I wanted to make sure that didn't happen to other people." Silence stretched like taffy. When Liana finally looked up, Jaewon was staring at her with an expression that made her chest ache. Something raw and exposed flickered behind those dangerous eyes before he shuttered it. "What?" she demanded. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Like what?" "Like I don't know, human or something." His jaw clenched. A muscle ticked beneath the dragon tattoo. "What did you think I saw?" "Property, a debt, Marcus's leftover problem." The words tasted bitter. "That's what I am to you, right? Just another asset." Jaewon stood so abruptly his chair scraped against hardwood. He rounded the table in 3 strides and crouched beside her chair. Eye level now, close enough that she saw shadows and ghosts haunting those eyes. "My mother wanted to be a doctor," he said quietly, voice rough like he'd swallowed glass. "She died when I was 25, bullet meant for my father. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong life." Liana's breath caught. "Jaewon, don't." His hand came up, stopped just short of her face. His fingers trembled, barely noticeable but there. "Don't apologize for things that aren't your fault." "Then don't treat me like I'm one of them." "One of who?" "The bad things that happened to you." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm not your enemy." Hearing his name on her lips without fear, just his name, soft and almost gentle, did something to him. Liana watched it happen, watched his pupils dilate until his eyes looked black, watched his throat work on a hard swallow, watched his careful control fracture. His hand finally made contact, cupping her jaw with a gentleness that contradicted everything about him. His palm was warm, calloused, and so careful it made her want to cry. "No," he murmured, thumb brushing her cheekbone in a slow stroke that sent electricity down her spine. "You're much more dangerous than an enemy." "What does that mean?" But he didn't answer, just stared at her mouth like he was memorizing it. His other hand gripped the armrest of her chair so hard his knuckles went white. Liana's heart thundered. She should pull away, should maintain distance, should remember he was a criminal who'd accepted her as payment. But God help her. She leaned into his touch instead. That's what broke him. Jaewon stood abruptly and walked out. Didn't say goodnight. Didn't look back. Just left her sitting there with her skin on fire and her mind reeling. The food had gone cold. Liana didn't notice. She pressed her fingers to her jaw where he'd touched her and felt the ghost of his warmth still burning there. This wasn't ownership in his eyes. This was obsession beginning to take root. And the most terrifying part? Some reckless piece of her wanted to know what happened when a man like Jaewon Beck finally stopped fighting what he wanted. She had a feeling she was about to find out. Liana didn't sleep. She lay in those silk sheets staring at the ceiling, replaying the way Jae-won had looked at her. The tremor in his fingers, the hunger in his eyes, the careful, devastating gentleness of his touch against her jaw. "You're much more dangerous than an enemy." What the hell did that mean? At 2 a.m. she gave up and wandered to the windows. The garden below was lit by soft landscape lights, cherry blossoms ghostly in the darkness. Seoul sprawled beyond the walls, millions of lives happening while hers had been reduced to 30 days in a gilded cage. Her phone was gone. They'd taken it when they grabbed her. No way to contact her friends at the academy, her roommate, Sarah, anyone. For all they knew, she'd just vanished. Maybe that's exactly what Marcus wanted. Rage bubbled up, hot and acidic. Marcus, who'd sworn he loved her, who'd convinced her to give up her apartment in Atlanta, her support system, her plans, who'd looked her in the eye 2 years ago and promised Seoul would be their fresh start, then sold her like livestock the moment his debts came due. "I hope you rot," she whispered to the glass. Strong words for 2 in the morning. Liana spun. Jae-won stood in her doorway, dressed in black silk pajama pants and nothing else. Just acres of golden skin and ink. So much ink. The dragon wrapped around his torso, scales detailed enough to look 3-dimensional. Korean characters down his ribs. Bogsu. Revenge. Tiger stripes across his shoulders, and something else she couldn't make out winding down his left side. His hair was mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked unfairly beautiful and completely exhausted. "What are you doing here?" Her voice came out breathier than intended. She crossed her arms over her thin tank top, suddenly aware she was barely dressed. The cool air had her skin prickling. His gaze traveled down her body, slow, deliberate, hungry, before snapping back to her face like he'd been burned, his jaw clenched. "I heard you moving around, thought you might need something." At 2 a.m., in my bedroom, I was already awake. He stayed in the doorway, maintaining distance like he didn't trust himself to come closer. "I don't sleep much. Ghosts make terrible roommates." There was dark humor in his voice, but also truth. Liana recognized it because she carried her own ghosts, her mother's face, Marcus's lies, every dream she'd deferred. "Join the club," she muttered. Something shifted in his expression. Understanding, maybe. He moved to the windows but stopped a careful 3 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to maintain propriety. For a Mafia don who'd accepted her as payment, he was oddly concerned with boundaries. "You're thinking about him," Jae-won said. Not a question. "Marcus? Yeah, wondering how I missed that the man I loved was capable of..." Her throat closed. "Of this." People hide what they need to. He probably hid it from himself, too. Jae-won's reflection in the glass was all hard edges and shadows. Addiction makes cowards of everyone eventually. "You sound like you know from experience." "My father was addicted to power. Watched it destroy him piece by piece until there was nothing left but violence and paranoia." His hand came up, touching the scar through his eyebrow absently. "This was from him. Birthday present when I turned 15. Said I needed to learn that family doesn't make you safe." Liana's breath caught. That's horrible. "That was Tuesday in the Bayek house." He turned to face her, and the rawness in his eyes made her chest ache. "I'm telling you this so you understand something, Liana. I'm not a good man. I've hurt people, done things that would make you sick. But I'm not Marcus." "I know that. Do you?" He took 1 step closer, just one, "because you should be more afraid of me than you are." But here's what Liana was starting to realize, what terrified her more than his reputation or his violence. Jae-won was trying to scare her away, trying to make her hate him, and it wasn't working. "Maybe I'm terrible at self-preservation," she said softly. His laugh was rough. "That's becoming very clear." They stood in loaded silence. Liana was hyper-aware of the bare inches between them now, of the heat radiating off his skin, of the way his hands kept clenching and unclenching like he was fighting the urge to reach for her. "Why did you leave?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "At dinner. You just walked out." Jae-won's jaw worked. "You know why?" I really don't. Because staying would have been a mistake. What kind of mistake? He stared at her for a long moment, something warring behind his eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough as gravel. The kind where I do something we can't take back, where I stop being your captor and become something worse. What's worse than a captor? Someone you want back. The confession hit like a physical blow. Liana's heart slammed against her ribs because she understood exactly what he meant. Understood that this, whatever was sparking between them, was dangerous precisely because it was mutual. You're afraid, she breathed, terrified. He took another step closer, and now there were only inches between them. I've known you one day, Liana. One day. And I'm already thinking about how to keep you past 30, about what I'd have to become to deserve you, about... He stopped, jaw clenching so hard she heard his teeth grind, about things I have no right to think. Her pulse thundered. She should step back, should remind him and herself that this started with coercion and violence, that he bought her like property, but all she could focus on was the ache in his voice, the way he looked at her like she was air and he was drowning. Jae-won. Voices erupted from somewhere in the house, angry, rapid Korean that Liana didn't understand. Then something crashed, glass shattering, wood splintering. Jae-won's entire body went rigid. His hand went to the small of his back where she now noticed a gun tucked into his waistband. Stay here, he ordered, already moving toward the door. Lock it behind me. Don't open it for anyone but Minho or me. Alacio? Understand? What's happening? Nai Dongseng, he muttered. My brother. And the venom in those two words made her blood run cold. He doesn't know when to quit. Jae-won, wait. He turned back, and for just a second his hand cupped her face, that same devastating gentleness that contradicted everything about him. His thumb brushed her cheekbone and she felt him trembling. Stay here, he repeated, please. I need to know you're safe while I handle this. Then he was gone. Liana locked the door with shaking hands and pressed her ear against the wood. More shouting. Things breaking, men arguing in Korean too fast for her limited vocabulary. Then, silence. The kind of silence that felt like a held breath. She sank to the floor, arms wrapped around her knees, and tried to make sense of what just happened. Jae-won's confession, his brother causing chaos, the way he'd touched her face like she was something precious he was terrified of breaking. I'm already thinking about how to keep you past 30. This wasn't a man slowly falling. This was a man in free fall, desperately trying to grab onto something, anything, before he hit the ground. And somehow, impossibly, that something was her. The rational part of Liana's brain screamed that she should be planning escape, should be looking for weaknesses in his security, plotting how to contact the embassy, anything. But the rest of her, the part that recognized the ghosts in his eyes because they matched her own, that part wondered what would happen if she just let herself fall too. Outside her door, footsteps approached, stopped. Someone knocked. 3 slow, deliberate raps. Nuguseo? Who is it? She tried, voice shaking. A voice she didn't recognize answered in English, smooth as poisoned honey. Someone who wants to meet my brother's new pet. Open the door, beautiful. Let's talk about how much you're really worth. Liana's blood turned to ice. That wasn't Jae-won, and whoever it was had just made it very clear. The 30 days she'd been promised. They might not last through the night. Liana's hand flew to her mouth, stifling the gasp that wanted to escape. She backed away from the door, heart hammering so hard she felt it in her throat. I know you can hear me. The voice was silk over razors, younger than Jae-won's, smoother, but with an edge that promised cruelty. I'm Tae-hyun, Jae-won's brother, the one who actually runs things around here while Yong plays at being civilized. Don't respond, don't engage. Jae-won said not to open the door for anyone. He told you 30 days, didn't he? Tae-hyun continued, conversational, like they were chatting over coffee. That you'd be his guest, then free to go. Geogismal lies. Do you really think my brother lets anything go once he decides he wants it? Liana's back hit the opposite wall. The room suddenly felt smaller, the luxury suffocating. "Here's what actually happens," Taehyun said. "Day 29, something convenient occurs. A threat, a complication, some excuse to extend your stay, then another, and another, until you forget you ever had a life before this house." "Go away," Liana managed, voice steadier than she felt. Laughter, low and mean. "Oh, she speaks. Good. I was worried my brother picked a boring one this time, though I have to admit, you're much prettier than Sarah was, the last American girl who thought she could save him. What happened to her?" "Well," a pause, loaded with malice. "Let's just say she learned that some people can't be saved. They can only drag you down with them." Ice flooded Liana's veins. Sarah? Her roommate Sarah? No, different Sarah. Had to be. But the name landed like a punch anyway. Taehyun. Jaewon's voice cut through the hallway like a blade. "Step away from her door, now." "I'm just introducing myself, Young, being a good host. You're being a dead man if you don't move." What Liana couldn't see, what she wouldn't know until much later, was that Taehyun was testing something. Testing whether his brother's sudden protection of this American woman was genuine obsession or strategic play, and the answer, written all over Jaewon's face, was far more dangerous than either of them realized. Footsteps, scuffling. Something slammed against the wall hard enough to rattle the doorframe. Then Jaewon's voice again, closer now, barely controlled. "Liana, it's me, open up." She moved to the door, fingers trembling on the lock, counted to 3, opened it. Jaewon stood there, shirt torn at the shoulder, a cut above his eyebrow bleeding down his temple. Behind him, Taehyun leaned against the wall, younger by maybe 5 years, leaner, devastatingly handsome in a way that felt poisonous. His lip was split, and he wore a smile that made Liana's skin crawl. "Ah, there she is," Taehyun said in English, gaze dragging over her with calculating interest. "Even prettier up close. I can see why you're breaking all your rules for her, Hyung. Leave." Jaewon didn't turn around, body positioned between Liana and his brother like a human shield. "Now, before I forget we share blood." "Forget?" Taehyun's laugh was sharp. "You already forgot when you accepted her as payment. Father always said you were too soft, too Western. Guess he was right. You can't even keep one woman without catching feelings. I don't have to explain my decisions to you." "No, but you'll have to explain them to the family council. They're very interested in why you've been so distracted lately. Profits down, operations failing, almost like someone's sabotaging us from the inside." Taehyun's eyes glittered with malice. "They're starting to ask questions, Hyung, and I'm running out of answers to give them." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Jaewon's shoulders went rigid, every muscle in his body coiled tight. "Is that what this is about? You threatening me through her?" "I'm not threatening anyone, just stating facts." Taehyun pushed off the wall, hands in his pockets, the picture of casual menace. "But since we're being honest, keep your pet on a leash. This house has a lot of rooms, a lot of places someone could get lost, and not everyone here is as fond of Americans as you seem to be." He started walking away, then paused, turned back with that serpent smile. "Oh, and Liana?" He switched to English again. "Ask him about the girl before you. Ask him what happens to women who get too close to the Beck family's secrets. Sweet. Dreams beautiful." Then he was gone, his laughter echoing down the hallway like a promise of violence. Jaewon finally turned, and the look on his face made Liana's chest constrict. Exhaustion, fury, something that looked dangerously close to fear, not for himself, but for her. "Are you hurt?" His gaze swept over her, checking for damage even though Taehyun never touched her. "I'm fine. You're bleeding." "It's nothing." He touched the cut above his eyebrow absently, then seemed to realize he was still standing in her doorway. Blood dripped onto his collar. I should go. Let you rest." "Like hell." Liana grabbed his arm before he could leave. "Get in here. You need that cleaned before it gets infected." "Liana, don't argue with me. Sit." Something in her tone, teacher firm, no nonsense, made him obey. He sank onto the velvet sofa while she disappeared into the bathroom, returning with the first aid kit she'd spotted earlier under the sink. The silence between them felt heavy as she dabbed antiseptic on his cut. He flinched, but didn't pull away, just watched her face with an intensity that made her hands shake. Who's Sarah? The question came out before she could stop it. Jaewon's jaw clenched. A lie designed to scare you. So there was no other American woman. His eyes met hers, and she saw the truth there before he spoke. There was, 3 years ago, but not the way Tae-hyun implied. Liana's hand stilled. Tell me. Her name was Rebecca, American teacher, like you. Got involved with one of our lower-level guys who didn't tell her what business we were really in. His voice was flat, emotionless, the tone of someone reciting facts to avoid feeling them. When she found out, she tried to go to the police. Tae-hyun found out first. What happened to her? I got her out. Put her on a plane back to Boston with enough money to start over and a very clear message to forget everything she'd seen. His hand came up, covering hers against his face. But Tae-hyun never forgave me for that. Called it weakness. Said I was betraying the family. Were you? Yes. No hesitation. And I'd do it again. Liana's heart hammered as she processed this. Every word out of Jaewon's mouth contradicted the man she'd expected him to be. The monster. The villain. The one who bought women like property. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you're caught in the middle of. This isn't just about Marcus's debt, Liana. It's about a war that's been brewing in my family for 3 years, and my brother just made it very clear. His voice roughened. That he's willing to use you as a weapon against me. Fear spiked through her, cold and sharp. What does that mean? It means the 30 days I promised? He pulled away, standing abruptly, putting distance between them like he didn't trust himself. They might not be enough to keep you safe, not from him, not from the family council, not from... From what? He turned, and the look in his eyes nearly brought her to her knees. Raw, desperate, terrified. From me, because the smart thing, the right thing, would be to send you away tomorrow, put you on a plane, give you money, make sure you disappear where my brother can't. Find you. His hands clenched into fists. But I don't want to. I want to keep you here, in this house where I can see you, and that makes me exactly as selfish as every other Beck man who came before me. The confession hung between them like a blade. Liana should feel trapped, should be planning escape, should see this for what it was, a powerful man's obsession wrapped in pretty words about protection, but all she could focus on was the anguish in his voice, the war raging behind his eyes between what he wanted and what he knew was right. What if I don't want to leave? The words escaped before her common sense could stop them. Jaewon's head snapped up. What? I'm not saying I trust you. I'm not saying this is okay. She moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. But if what you're telling me is true, if I leave, I'm in danger from the other organizations Marcus owed. If I stay, I'm in danger from your brother. Either way, I'm screwed. Liana. So maybe. She stopped an arm's length away, close enough to see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Maybe I take my chances with the devil I'm starting to know. His breath caught. You don't know me. Then tell me who Jaewon Beck really is. I'm my father's son, a killer, a criminal, someone who's done unforgivable things and will probably do more before this is over. And his voice cracked. And I'm tired. So tired of being what everyone expects, what my name demands. I look at you and I think maybe there's still something in me worth salvaging. But that's not fair to you. It's not fair to make you my redemption. Liana's heart broke a little at the raw honesty, at the way he looked at her like she was both his salvation and his damnation. I didn't ask to be here, she said quietly, but I am. And something tells me running won't actually save me. So maybe instead of deciding what's fair, you tell me the truth, all of it, and let me decide what I want to do with it. Jaewon stared at her for a long moment, then slowly he nodded. The truth is, I'm in over my head. With you, with my family, with everything. He dragged a hand through his hair. And the worst part, I'm about to make it all so much worse. How? His eyes met hers, dark with promise and threat. Because tomorrow, I'm taking you somewhere. Somewhere Tae-hyun can't follow. Somewhere we can figure out what the hell to do before this entire thing explodes. Where? A ghost of a smile touched his lips, dangerous and beautiful. Somewhere I swore I'd never go back to, the place where all of this started. He moved to the door, then paused. Lock this behind me. Don't open it for anyone, not even me, unless I give you the password. What password? Yong, dragon, in Korean. If I knock and don't say that word, you call Min-ho immediately. Understood? Liana nodded, throat tight. As the door closed between them, she realized with sinking certainty that she'd just agreed to go deeper into the darkness with a man who was either her protector or her destruction. And God help her, she was starting to hope for the former. Liana woke to soft knocking at 6 a.m., barely 3 hours after Jae-won had left her room. Yong, came his voice through the door. Dragon. She opened it to find him transformed. Black jeans, plain t-shirt, leather jacket. No suit, no obvious weapons, though she suspected they were there. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He hadn't slept either. He looked younger like this. Less Mafia Don, more dangerous college student. And God help her, still devastatingly attractive. Pack light, he said without preamble, holding out a small duffel bag. One bag, comfortable clothes. We leave in 20 minutes. Where are we going? Busan, 3 hours south. He handed her a baseball cap and sunglasses. Wear these. Keep your head down. My brother has eyes everywhere in Seoul, but the further we get from the city, the safer you'll be. Liana took the items, her sleep-deprived brain trying to catch up. This was day 2 of her 30-day sentence, and she was already on the run. You're serious about this? Dead serious. Tae-hyun made his move last night. That means the family council will summon me soon. Demand answers about you, about the failing operations. We need to move before that happens. His jaw clenched. And I need to show you something. Something that will help you understand what you're really caught in the middle of. She should refuse. Should demand he take her to the embassy instead. But the look in his eyes, urgent, almost desperate, made her nod. 20 minutes later, she was sliding into the passenger seat of a black Mercedes. Nothing flashy, almost boring in its ordinariness. Jae-won drove, and Min-ho followed in a second car 2 lengths back. They left through a back exit, winding through Seoul's early morning streets. Street vendors setting up pojang matcha for breakfast rush, ajumas in visors heading to markets, office workers streaming towards subway stations. Normal life. The kind Liana used to have. The silence in the car felt heavy. Liana studied Jae-won's profile, the hard line of his jaw, the way his hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Tell me about Busan, she said finally. He kept his eyes on the road. I grew up there, before my father moved operations to Seoul when I was 15. A pause, loaded. It's where my mother is buried. Liana's chest tightened. You're taking me to see your mother's grave? Among other things. He merged onto the expressway heading south, the Mercedes eating up kilometers. There's someone I want you to meet, someone who changed everything for me. Who? But Jae-won just shook his head. You'll see. They drove for an hour in comfortable silence, Seoul's sprawl giving way to mountains and tunnels. The landscape changed, greener, wilder. Liana caught herself, relaxing despite everything, lulled by the rhythm of the road and the unexpected peace of being in motion. She glanced at Jae-won, caught him glancing back. Heat flickered between them, brief, electric, before he returned his attention to the road. Can I ask you something? She said. Depends on the question. Last night, you said you were already thinking about how to keep me past 30 days. She watched his jaw tighten. Did you mean that, or were you just trying to scare me? His hands flexed on the wheel. For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I meant it. Every word. That's insane. You don't even know me. I know you spit in the face of a man who could kill you. I know you care more about becoming a doctor to help people than about your own safety. I know you look at me like I'm human instead of a monster." His voice roughened. "And I know that terrifies me more than anything my brother could do." Liana's heart hammered. "Why?" "Because wanting something makes you weak. My father taught me that, and I've spent 10 years making sure I never wanted anything badly enough to be destroyed by losing it." He glanced at her again, and the vulnerability in his eyes stole her breath. "Then you walked into my office, and suddenly I'm breaking every rule I set for myself." The confession hung between them like a promise and a threat. "Jae-won." His phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered in Korean, voice sharp. "Yoboseo?" Liana couldn't understand the rapid conversation, but she caught the shift in his body language, the way his shoulders went rigid, the curse that escaped his lips. He ended the call and immediately dialed another number. "Minho, stay alert. We might have company." "What's wrong?" Liana asked. "Maybe nothing. Maybe everything." His eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. "One of my contacts just warned me that the Choi family, one of the other organizations Marcus owed money to, they've been asking questions about an American woman, about you." Ice flooded Liana's veins. "I thought you said you were the smallest debt." "I was. But the Choi family doesn't like losing assets, and Marcus apparently told them about you before he came to me. They think I stole what was rightfully theirs." His jaw clenched. "They're not wrong." What does that mean? What Liana didn't know yet, what would only become clear in the chaos to come, was that Jae-won hadn't just accepted her to collect a debt. He deliberately outbid 2 other crime families to keep her away from situations where 30 days would have been mercy compared to what awaited her. "It means we need to get to Busan. Fast." He pressed the accelerator, and the Mercedes surged forward. Another hour passed. The tension in the car was thick enough to choke on. Liana found herself watching Jae-won, the way the morning light caught the angles of his face, the ink peeking from his collar, the careful control in every movement. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked quietly. "Taking me to Busan, giving me answers. You could have just kept me locked up." "Because keeping you in the dark keeps you dependent, and I don't want—" He stopped, jaw working. "I don't want you to stay because you have no choice. If you're going to stay, I want it to be because you chose to." Her heart stuttered. "And if I choose to leave?" His hands tightened on the wheel until his knuckles went white. "Then I'll have to let you go, even if it kills me." The GPS announced they were 30 minutes from Busan when Jae-won's phone rang again. This time it was Minho, voice urgent through the car's speakers. "Boss, we've got a tail, 2 cars, black sedans. They picked us up at the last toll booth." Jae-won's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Liana turned and saw them. 2 black sedans weaving through traffic, closing the distance with predatory precision. "How long?" Jae-won's voice was deadly calm. 5 minutes if they keep this pace." "Choi family?" "License plates match their fleet." Liana's breath came faster. "What do they want?" Jae-won's hand found hers across the center console, gripping tight. The touch sent electricity up her arm despite the fear clawing at her chest. "They want their property back," he said quietly, "and they're not interested in negotiating. The Choi family, they run trafficking operations through Busan ports. Women disappear into shipping containers, end up in markets across Southeast Asia. That's what Marcus was selling you into before I intervened." The world tilted. "Oh God, they're not getting you." His voice was steel wrapped in fury. "I don't care what I have to do. You're mine and they can go straight to hell." The possessiveness should have scared her. Instead, some twisted part of her felt safe. "What do? We run." He pressed the accelerator harder. The Mercedes hit 120 kilometers per hour. "Minho, stay close. If they engage, you know what to do." "Boss, there's a 3rd car, just merged from the on-ramp ahead." Jae-won cursed. 3 cars now, 1 behind, 2 ahead, boxing them in. Traffic was thinning as they approached the Busan city limits. Fewer witnesses, more dangerous. "Jae-won!" Liana's voice shook. "Look at me." He squeezed her hand, and despite the chaos, his touch steadied her. I've gotten out of worse situations. Trust me. Please." She did. God help her, she did. The lead sedan ahead suddenly swerved, cutting across lanes to slow them down. Jaewon jerked the wheel right, taking the shoulder at 130 kilometers per hour. The Mercedes shuddered, but held. "Hold on," he growled. That's when the first gunshot rang out. The side mirror exploded in a spray of glass and plastic. Liana screamed, ducking instinctively. Another shot punched through the rear window, spider-webbing the glass. Jaewon's face was a mask of controlled fury as he wrenched the wheel left, cutting back into traffic. Horns blared. A truck swerved to avoid them. "Minho, return fire, keep them back." Gunshots erupted behind them, Minho's car engaging the pursuers. Liana's ears rang. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she thought it might break through. "There's an exit ahead," Jaewon said, voice eerily calm. "Service road. We lose them in the shipyard district. They'll follow. Let them." His smile was dark, dangerous. "They don't know Busan like I do, and they definitely don't know who's waiting for us." He took the exit at 140 kilometers per hour, tires screaming. The Mercedes fishtailed, but Jaewon corrected with expert precision. Behind them, 2 sedans followed. The third had been blocked by Minho. They plunged into Busan's industrial district, narrow streets between warehouses, shipping containers stacked like metal mountains. Jaewon navigated the maze with the confidence of someone who'd run these streets as a teenager. Another gunshot, this one closer. Liana felt the impact as the bullet hit their rear panel. "Almost there," Jaewon muttered. Come on, come on." He whipped the Mercedes around a corner and slammed the brakes. They skidded to a stop in front of a nondescript warehouse. The door was already rolling open. "Inside now." He grabbed her hand and pulled her from the car. They ran. Behind them, the sedan squealed around the corner. But before they could fire again, the warehouse door slammed shut, and standing in the dimly lit interior, surrounded by a dozen men holding weapons, was a tiny Korean woman in her 60s, wearing an apron and holding a wooden spoon like a sword. "Yeah, I nabinsegya," she barked at Jaewon. "You bad bastard! You brought trouble to my door again?" Jaewon actually smiled. "Hello, Mrs. Choi. I brought someone for you to meet." Outside, engines revved. Angry voices shouted in Korean. The Choi family knew exactly where they were, and they weren't leaving without a fight. Mrs. Choi was barely 5 feet tall, but she commanded the warehouse like a general. The men flanking her held weapons with practiced ease, eyes trained on the door where the Choi family's cars idled outside. "How many?" she asked in Korean. 3 cars, maybe 12 men. Jaewon positioned himself between Liana and the door. "Of course they followed you, Babo." "Stupid." Mrs. Choi looked at Liana, dark eyes sharp. She switched to English. "You must be the American girl causing all this trouble." "She didn't cause anything," Jaewon cut in. "I did." Outside, angry voices shouted. Someone pounded on the door. Mrs. Choi held up her hand, stopping her men from responding. "Let them yell. This is my territory." She jabbed her spoon at Jaewon. "But you brought them here anyway, Myeongchong and Nom." "Stupid fool." Before Jaewon could respond, one of Mrs. Choi's men burst through a side door. "They're leaving." "But they left this." He handed her a phone. Mrs. Choi's face darkened as she read. She showed the screen to Jaewon without a word. Liana watched color drain from his face. "What? What does it say?" Marcus made a deal with the Choi family in Taehyun. Jaewon's voice was hollow. "He gave them proof of my sabotage, financial records, communications, everything, in exchange for you back in a position in my brother's organization." The room tilted. "He can't. There's more." The dragon tattoo on his forearm rippled as his hand clenched. "The family council is summoning me to Seoul, tonight, to answer for my betrayal. If I don't come, they put a price on both our heads." Mrs. Choi crossed her arms. "So you go back. You face them." "They'll kill him," Liana said, panic rising. "Only if he goes in defenseless." Mrs. Choi moved to a filing cabinet and pulled out a thick envelope. "Insurance. Everything you need to prove Tae-hyun's been skimming family money for 2 years. Proof he's planning a coup. Proof he murdered your father's captain and blamed it on the Kang family. Liana's breath caught. Your brother killed someone in your own family? Tae-hyun's been consolidating power since our father died. Jae-won's voice was flat. I just couldn't prove it until now. So you walk into that council meeting, Mrs. Choi said, and you burn your brother's world down before he burns yours. But you need leverage. You need to make the council understand that touching you means war. Her eyes shifted to Liana. You claim her, publicly, in front of all 12 families. What does that mean? Liana asked. It means you become his woman under council law, Mrs. Choi explained. Not his prisoner, not his property, his protected. Harming you would be the same as attacking him directly. It forces every family to choose sides. Touch her, and they declare war on the Bayek name. The weight of it settled over Liana like a shroud. I'll have a target on my back. The target's already there, Jae-won said quietly. This way, you're protected by something they understand. Power, claim, territory. Liana stared at him, at the vulnerability barely contained behind his careful mask. And you're okay with that? Using me as what, exactly? Not using you. His voice roughened. Claiming you. There's a difference. One is transaction, the other is... He stopped, jaw working. The other is saying you're mine, and anyone who touches you answers to me with blood. Heat flooded her despite the fear. The possessiveness in his voice, the fierce protectiveness, it should terrify her. Instead, it made something in her chest pull tight. Okay, she whispered. Let's do it. Mrs. Choi's smile was sharp. Aigo, you're both idiots, brave idiots. She moved toward the door. My boys will escort you back. You have 4 hours before the council meets at midnight. Don't be late. The drive back to Seoul was silent and charged. Liana sat in the passenger seat watching Seoul's lights grow closer and tried to ignore how aware she was of Jae-won beside her. Every shift of his hand on the gear shift, every glance he stole when he thought she wasn't looking, every breath that seemed to sync with hers. The fear should have killed any attraction. Instead, it amplified everything. Tell me what to expect, she said finally, at the council meeting. 12 families, all with stakes in my father's empire. Tae-hyun will present Marcus's evidence, demand I answer for sabotaging operations. His hands tightened on the wheel. Then I present evidence of his betrayal. Whoever the council believes wins. And the other dies, or wishes they had. Liana's stomach twisted. And me? What happens when you claim me? What she didn't know yet, what would only become clear in the chaos to come, was that Jae-won had been preparing for this moment since the second night. Every gentle touch, every confession, every time he'd chosen her safety over his own interests. He'd been falling, and now he was ready to let the entire underworld know it. I'll speak the words in Korean first, traditional formula, then I'll translate so you understand. He glanced at her, and the heat in his eyes made her breath catch. It's binding. Once I say it, you're under my protection until death, or until you renounce the claim. Can I? Renounce it? Yes, at any time. Just say the words and you're free. His jaw clenched. But while it stands, anyone who touches you signs their own death warrant. They hit Seoul city limits at 11 p.m., glittering skyline rising before them like a promise and a threat. Jae-won's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression went cold. Tae-hyun, confirming my attendance, and reminding me Marcus will be there as his guest. Venom dripped from every word. He wants me to see the man who sold you, standing beside him. Rage flooded Liana's chest. Good. Let him be there. Let me look Marcus in the eye when everything falls apart. Jae-won's hand found hers across the center console, squeezed. You're terrifying when you're angry. Good. His thumb traced circles on her palm, a touch that felt like a brand. Neither of them let go. They pulled up to a building in Gangnam, glass and steel hiding violence behind corporate anonymity. Minho and Mrs. Choi's men formed a protective detail as they parked. Jae-won killed the engine but didn't move, just sat there staring at the building. Jae-won? He turned, and the vulnerability in his eyes nearly broke her. If this goes wrong, if Taehyun wins, Minho will get you out. Promise me you'll run. No, Liana, we're in this together. She squeezed his hand. I'm not running. You're insane. I'm yours. The words escaped before she could stop them. Jae-won went very still. Then, with aching gentleness, he cupped her face. When this is over, he said quietly, when we've survived tonight, I'm going to kiss you the way I've been wanting to since you spit in my face. Heat flooded her. Promises. Promises. I don't make promises I can't keep. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. Now let's go survive this. They stepped into midnight air. Minho handed Jae-won a gun. He checked the magazine and tucked it away with practiced ease. Ready? Minho asked. No, but we're doing this anyway. Jae-won's hand found Liana's. Stay close. Don't speak unless I tell you. And remember, whatever I have to say in there, I'm doing it to keep you alive. The elevator ride to the 12th floor felt like descending into hell. The doors opened onto a hallway lined with armed men, all watching Jae-won with expressions ranging from respect to hostility. At the end, massive double doors stood open. Light and voices spilled out, heated Korean, the sound of power negotiating with violence. Jae-won squeezed her hand once, then his expression shifted into something cold and regal and absolutely terrifying. The Mafia Don was back. They walked through those doors together. Every conversation stopped. 12 men sat around a massive table. At the head sat an elderly man with a face like carved stone, Chairman Song. And standing beside him, wearing a serpent smile, was Taehyun. Next to Taehyun stood Marcus. Her ex-boyfriend looked comfortable, smug, completely at ease, until he saw Liana walk in on Jae-won's arm. Then his face went white. His eyes widened. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. What? Marcus sputtered. What is she doing here? She's supposed to be mine. Jae-won's voice cut through the room like a blade. He spoke in English, making sure Liana understood everything. Yes, Marcus, she is. Did you really think I'd let scum like you dictate what happens to her? Marcus's shock transformed into rage. You can't. I made a deal with Taehyun. We had an agreement. Hyung, Taehyun said in Korean, false warmth dripping from every syllable. So good of you to join us, and you brought your pet. How sentimental. I brought the woman under my protection, Jae-won replied in English. The woman you and your associate thought you could use as leverage. Chairman Song's eyes narrowed. Baek Jae-won, you stand accused of betraying this council, sabotaging operations, putting personal interests above profit. How do you answer? Jae-won smiled, the most dangerous expression Liana had ever seen. I answer by asking a better question, Chairman Song. He pulled the manila envelope from his jacket and dropped it on the table. Who's really been betraying this council? Me? His eyes locked on Taehyun. Or the man standing beside you, planning to put a bullet in your head the moment he consolidates enough power. Taehyun's smile never wavered, but something flickered in his eyes. Fear. The room exploded into chaos. The council chamber erupted. Voices overlapped in rapid Korean, some angry, some shocked, some calculating. Chairman Song held up a hand, and silence fell like a guillotine. These are serious accusations, Baek Jae-won. The chairman's voice was granite. You accuse your own brother of treason. You have proof? Open the envelope. One council member spread the contents across the table. Photographs, bank statements, USB drives. The silence that followed was deafening as they examined the evidence. Chairman Song's face darkened. Baek Tae-hyun, these documents show systematic theft, communication with the Kang family, and surveillance footage of you executing Captain Hwang. His eyes were ice. Explain. Taehyun's composure cracked. This is fabricated. My brother has been sabotaging our operations for years. He's the traitor, not me. He's been helping women escape, destroying shipments, working against this family. I have been, Jaewon said calmly, sabotaging trafficking operations, the ones that violate even our codes. I've helped 73 women escape slavery. His voice hardened. But I didn't steal from this council, didn't murder our own, didn't plan a coup. That was all you, little brother. You self-righteous bastard. Taehyun's hand moved toward his jacket. Jaewon's gun cleared leather first, aimed at his brother's head. Don't. Every guard drew weapons, half aimed at Jaewon, half at Taehyun. The council was fracturing in real time. Enough! Chairman Song's voice cracked like thunder. Lower your weapons, now! Nobody moved. What Liana didn't know yet, what would shatter her world in the next 60 seconds, was that her entire life had been orchestrated by the man standing across from her. Every loss, every choice, every moment that led her to this room had roots in a decision Taehyun made 12 years ago. Baek Jaewon, Chairman Song said. You admit to sabotage, you bring an American woman into council chambers, you threaten family blood. Give me one reason I shouldn't execute you both. Jaewon lowered his gun slowly. Then he turned to Liana, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. Because I claim her, he said, under council law, under the old codes. He switched to Korean, voice ringing clear. 이 여자는 내 거야. 내 보호 아래에 있어. 누구든 그녀를 건드리면 나한테 피로 대답해야 돼. This woman is mine. She's under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me with blood. Several council members gasped. Then Jaewon went to one knee in front of Liana, still holding her hand. Liana Williams, I claim you as mine, my woman, my protected, my heart. His voice roughened. Anyone who harms you declares war on me. Do you accept? Tears burned her eyes. I accept. He stood and kissed her, desperate and fierce and tasting like promises and relief. When they broke apart, the room was chaos again. This is unprecedented, one council member sputtered. Chairman Song's eyes were calculating. Council law states that anyone who harms a claimed woman without just cause faces execution. He looked at Taehyun, and the evidence against Jaewon comes from this Marcus. He gestured dismissively at Liana's ex, who sold her in the first place. Tainted evidence, fruit of betrayal. Taehyun's face went white. You can't. I can. I am. Chairman Song picked up a photograph. You were careless, Taehyun, sloppy. Your father would be ashamed. My father would have executed him years ago for his weakness. Taehyun's control finally shattered. He jabbed a finger at Jaewon. He's been destroying everything we built, helping women escape, women who were profitable assets. Do you know how much money he's cost us? How many operations he's ruined? Operations that involve trafficking unwilling victims, Jaewon said coldly. Children, women who didn't choose this life. They're commodities. Taehyun stopped, breathing hard. Then his eyes slid to Liana, and something cruel twisted his features. You want to know about unwilling victims, Hyung? Ask your precious woman about her mother. Ice flooded Liana's veins. What? Taehyun? Jaewon's voice was a warning. Oh, he doesn't know either. Perfect. Taehyun's smile was poisonous. Tell me, Liana, how did your mother die? Medical malpractice, wasn't it? Misdiagnosis at an underfunded Atlanta hospital 12 years ago? Liana's throat closed. How do you... Because it wasn't malpractice. Taehyun's voice was silk over razors. It was me. The room spun. What? The word barely escaped Liana's lips. 12 years ago, I was expanding our operations into the U.S., Atlanta specifically. Your mother, Rebecca Williams, worked at a clinic in a neighborhood we were using for distribution. She saw something she shouldn't have, recognized one of our girls being moved through, threatened to go to the police. No. So I had her handled, made it look like a medical error, wrong medication, wrong dosage. Oops, tragic accident. She died within hours. Taehyun's smile widened. And her daughter, bright girl, wanted to be a doctor. She spent the next 12 years driven by that loss, driven enough to follow a worthless man to Korea, driven enough to end up right here in my brother's path. Poetic, isn't it? Liana couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her entire life, her mother's death, her dreams of medical school, her decision to come to Korea, all of it traced back to this monster. "You killed her," she whispered. "You killed my mother." "I eliminated a liability. There's a difference." Taehyun shrugged. "Though I'll admit I didn't expect her daughter to end up here. Fate has a sense of humor." Jaewon's face had gone white with rage. "You knew, all this time you knew who she was." "Of course I knew. The moment Marcus mentioned an American woman from Atlanta named Williams, I checked. Imagine my delight when I realized it was Rebecca's daughter, the perfect weapon to destroy you, the self-righteous brother trying to atone for father's sins by saving women. What better way to break you than to use the daughter of a woman I killed?" The gun was in Jaewon's hand again. "You used her. You brought her into this deliberately." "I created an opportunity. Marcus was already going to sell her to someone. I made sure the options were us or worse. Made sure you'd feel compelled to save her. Made sure you'd fall for her because that's what you do, Hyung. You fall for broken birds and think you can fix them." Taehyun's laugh was cruel. "And now she knows that her entire life has been shaped by my decisions. Knows that even your love for her has roots in my manipulation. How does it feel, Liana? Knowing you're here because I killed your mother?" Something in Liana broke, then reformed, harder, sharper. She stepped forward out of Jaewon's protective embrace and walked straight up to Taehyun. Every eye in the room tracked her movement. "You're right," she said quietly. "You killed my mother. You shaped my life. You manipulated events to hurt your brother." Taehyun's smile was triumphant. "Finally, you—" Liana slapped him, hard enough that the crack echoed through the chamber. "But you failed," she continued, voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Because I'm not broken. I'm not your weapon. And the man you tried to destroy." She glanced back at Jaewon. "He's twice the man you'll ever be." Taehyun's face twisted with rage. "You little—" He lunged for her throat. The gunshot was deafening. Taehyun stumbled, clutching his shoulder where Jaewon's bullet had torn through. Blood seeped between his fingers. "You reached for what's mine." Jaewon's voice was death itself. "Be grateful I let you live." Guards swarmed Taehyun, dragging him away. His screams of rage echoed down the hallway. Chairman Song stood. "Baek Taehyun will face formal charges: theft, murder, conspiracy. He'll spend the rest of his life in a cell." His eyes found Jaewon. "And you, your sabotage of trafficking operations. I'm prepared to overlook it. Call it unsanctioned justice. Your work with Mrs. Choi can expand, properly funded, properly protected. And Marcus?" Liana's voice was hoarse. Marcus, who'd been frozen in terror throughout everything, whimpered. "Exile," Chairman Song said, "permanent. He sets foot in Korea again, the penalty is death." Guards dragged Marcus away. He didn't even fight. Then the council filed out, leaving Jaewon and Liana alone in the massive chamber. Liana sagged against him, and he caught her, held her as sobs racked her body. "He killed her," she gasped. "He killed my mother and I never knew." "I'm sorry. God, Liana, I'm so sorry." Jaewon's voice cracked. "If I'd known, if I'd had any idea, you saved me anyway." She pulled back, looking up at him through tears. "Even not knowing, you saved me." "I love you." The confession tore out of him. "I know it's insane and fast, and your whole life has been shaped by my family's violence, but I love you, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of—" She kissed him, desperate and salt-stained and perfect. When they broke apart, Jaewon was trembling. "I love you too," Liana whispered, "and I choose this, choose you, choose us, despite everything, because of everything. Liana, take me home, Jaewon, wherever that is, wherever you are." He swept her into his arms and carried her out of that place of violence and power, out into Seoul's midnight air where cherry blossoms drifted like promises. 3 months later, Liana stood in Mrs. Choi's expanded shelter, medical clinic behind her, 112 women's photos on the wall. Her acceptance letter to Seoul National University's medical program sat in her pocket. Jae-won found her there, wrapped his arms around her from behind. Ready? For what? Everything. He turned her to face him, and the love in his eyes still took her breath away. Medical school. This life. Us. She pressed her hand to his chest, felt his heart thunder beneath her palm. I've been ready since I spit in your face. He laughed, real and bright and beautiful. Then he kissed her under fluorescent lights in the shelter built from his redemption and her resilience, surrounded by the ghosts of who they'd been and the promise of who they were becoming. And for the first time in both their lives, they felt like they'd finally come home. If you loved watching Jae-won and Liana's journey from that first defiant moment to their hard-won happy ending, show some love by hitting that like button and drop a comment telling me which moment had you most hooked. Was it the spit-in-the-face opener, the mother reveal, or that final kiss? And if you're craving more Afro-Korean romance stories with possessive heroes and fierce heroines who don't back down, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss when I drop the next series, trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.